All right. Well, I really want to step back a little bit and take some perspective here and really step way back, just briefly to set the context. I know most folks occasionally take this perspective, but I'll do it for all of us here. And essentially, what is it that we're doing here? We, as in E&B and the environmental folks in the districts, what is it that we're doing here, and why is it that I have a job, or actually, maybe I should say, why is it that Doug Boer has a job? I mean, and somebody asked me that question yesterday, by the way. How is it that we exist in our program, or why is it that we exist in our program? And I think the answer is somewhat obvious, but it really came into perspective a couple years ago, 3 summers ago. I traveled to Beijing, China, and even though I was there for a fairly important reason, I couldn't help but think about work for a little bit. And it really, some of the issues that country is dealing with, and in particular those big cities are dealing with, really puts it in perspective about where we are in the U.S. versus where China is with their environmental issues. And a couple of examples in particular, they have public water supplies that are severely contaminated. I mean, the idea of just turning on the tap and getting clean water, it's not because you might get a bug like in Mexico or something. It's because there are carcinogens and chemical contaminants in the water supply, and the ability to treat those contaminants is kind of sketchy through their water treatment process. I was on a bus in downtown Beijing and on an elevated structure, and I looked over and there was an apartment building where I could look right in the window of somebody in that apartment. I'm saying that it may have been 20 to 30 feet from the edge of that structure to the apartment building window. I could have thrown the rock into the window. And so the idea of what kind of transportation planning is that allows for a residential building to exist that close to a freeway facility. And the air in Beijing is immediately getting off the bus and breathing the air. You get this feeling in your lungs that this isn't right. This isn't good for me. All of a sudden, right away, start feeling sick. During the day, you couldn't tell if it was a cloudy or a sunny day. The haze was so thick, and it's just kind of a gray yellow. And as you know, Chinese kind of catapulted from where they were 20, 30, 40 years ago, from a borderline developing nation to a world leader. But there was a price paid. And a lot of the price was the environment, the human environment, the natural environment. They've lost a lot of their cultural resources. Their natural resources are being degraded. And here we are in the States that we get to enjoy some of those things because of the environmental regulations and protection that's in place. And because of those environmental regulations that are in place, we get to not just enjoy it, but we also, it provides jobs to some of us. So it is a career. And so, there are a lot of environmental regulations in place to protect what we do. We appreciate the intent of all those regulations. We, the department, appreciate the intent of all those regulations. The interpretation and implementation might be up for debate, but we certainly appreciate what these regulations are trying to do, and the results of those regulations I think we all enjoy day to day, day in and day out, the clean air, clean water, and the outdoors, and the cultural resources that we have available here in the States. So we have a myriad of those regulations that we have to work with. There are various counts of these, but there are about 50 or so that we deal with on a fairly regular basis of state and federal environmental laws and requirements. Each having their own procedure and process that we deal with. So there is this long list of compliance points that we have to go through for every decision we make. And the overriding umbrella for that is the National Environmental Policy Act that requires us to go through this process of environmental review for all of our decisions. And so then here we are with TxDOT's program and lots of decisions, lots of projects going through the process, and making sure that we are implementing and overseeing our environmental compliance for this process. And then, so with that, I'll get into the presentation of what our program kind of consists of and putting our program in perspective. So now that we're getting a better handle on being able to keep track of and account for all of our decision-making, environmental approvals, or we're able to crunch a lot more numbers than we used to. And this past fiscal year, FY14, we made 1,796 environmental approvals. That means all these projects had a documentation saying that it was compliant with the NEPA process. 1,796. Just to kind of get a comparison, I looked at some other federal agencies and see what kind of environmental programs they had. The Bureau of Land Management, a fairly busy environmental program over in that agency, had just over 1,000 environmental approvals. So we are up there with the biggest federal agencies. We, the state, are up there with the biggest federal agencies in environmental approvals and reviews. Just for those of y'all who haven't taken the count, we have about 80 people in the Environmental Affairs Division, and we have, depending on how you count them, 70 or 80 in the districts who do environmental work, so about 150, 160 people doing environmental work for the department and really working towards making those 1,796 approvals. So the program is fairly widespread and very busy. And within those approvals, we're able to kind of quantify where we're at and what kind of documentation we're putting into place here and document some trends on this. But as of last year, about 98% of these the documentation were categorical exclusion level, meaning that they were routine or minor activities. The documentation was relatively brief. I might get some argument for that on some projects, but the documentation was relatively brief for these CE decisions. And you can also kind of see the trend based on the past 10 years of making more CE decisions. That's also somewhat data-driven because we have better data than we did back then, but it also is kind of the workload that we have, Textile has had over the past 10 years, but also somewhat driven by the fact that we're able to categorize more of these decisions from EAs to categorical exclusions. So we're going to kind of downgrade these into CE level decisions. So there's a variety of things contributing to that trend, but you can kind of see where we're headed with this. And then when you're looking at preparation and review times, in the past this one is also somewhat affected by the quality of data as you go back further, but I think the trend is fairly indicative over the past 6 months in particular, but this is just the past year on how long it's taken to prepare and review and approve CE level decisions. And it's hard to gauge sometimes where you actually start the clock on these decisions for categorical exclusions. I think we're getting better now, but it hasn't been that good in the past. But I think most importantly is that now that we've really retooled the program in the first part of this year, we were going through a lot of transition and change. So now that maybe over the past 4 to 6 months, we can kind of get a gauge on the trend. I like that trend the past 4 or 5 months there. That's where it ought to be heading, and that the preparation and review time for categorical exclusions is decreasing, and I think we'll continue to see that trend go down a little further until it stabilizes, I hope, somewhere in that 20 to 30-day range. Again, this is preparation, review, and approval time. And then for our environmental assessments, the next step up for environmental reviews, again, a 10-year trend, looking here what's been going on. The time frame, I believe, is in months. So then, oh no, volume, sorry. We're looking at volume here, the number of EAs we're doing. And can't quite explain this one, why the number of EAs. I know we are able to categorize more projects as CEs. Maybe we're undertaking less larger projects, but again, I think it's a significant trend on the volume of EAs that we're doing these days. Over the past couple of years, 20 to 30 EAs a year, and these are approvals. And again, kind of comparing, maybe there is an explanation for the decrease in EAs, where maybe we are doing more CEs. Again, well, as we move forward with our better data, we'll see if this is actually true. And then the review time for the EAs. As you can see, you can read the number there, we were approaching 400, 500 days for EA reviews. Extending well over a year and a half just for the review process, up until a couple of years ago, and then we started really focusing on how we were doing the review process, getting the reviews done, and so now we're looking at something less than a year to get the EAs out. Again, we're looking at hopefully a trend that is in the near future that extends more than or less than a year as we move forward, and something less than a year. And then EISs, we don't do a whole lot of EISs. Right now we have about 9 or 10 in the pipeline, but we approve on average about 1 a year. So you can kind of just see what the volume is. Obviously the EISs are the very large projects, ones that take the horror stories of 5, 10, 12, 15 years to get approved. We're looking at about approval of one of those a year. And so that's kind of the context of the environmental program, the environmental document, or at least the NEPA side of the program. of E&V and TxDOT's environmental program, and how busy we are, and where those decisions are made, and how long it takes to make those decisions, and essentially establishing the baseline on how we're going to be measured moving forward. That's a key point in that the leadership here, as well as moving forward with NEPA assignment, and that we're going to be looking at our performance and how we measure it, where you're looking at some of the baseline numbers that are going into that measurement process right now. So next, I'll cover some of the broad program initiatives that we've started over the past year, or begun, or actually some completed over the past year. Just random programs here. As Dan mentioned, we did a lot of retooling of our guidance. Some of y'all knew or know that we had an environmental manual that had been around for quite a long time, hadn't been changed in quite a number of years. When I was on the private side, I didn't find it particularly useful in developing environmental documents by referencing the manual. So one of the first things coming in here is like, well, let's make something useful that the users, the document preparers can reference on how to do the work. And so we started a retooling of what were the SOUs, and we created what we have as handbooks. I would say we don't have an environmental manual right now, but essentially the handbooks are chapters of what would be a manual. So if you want to look at it that way, that the compilation of environmental handbooks we have up on our website is the environmental manual. We've completed 20 handbooks and developed 15 environmental toolkits. Again, so this is a reliable reference for how you want to go about doing the work, whether you're a consultant, whether you're working in a district, whether you're a local government. The first place of reference when you have a question should be the toolkits and those handbooks. And it's actually, there was a case where it was a couple months ago where we had an internal question about one of my staff came to me and said, well, how should we handle this particular issue? I said, well, did you look in the handbook? Well, no. It's like, okay, well, here's a test. Pulled it up on our website and went through and scrolled to that part. It's like, well, here you go. This is the process. We do have to have, I think it has something to do with public involvement. And we have to do this, and it was a notice period or something like that, and there it is. So thank God it was in the handbook, and that's the way it's supposed to work. And so we put it to test, it works, and so please, that's the first point of reference in complying with our program in developing environmental documents, are the handbooks and the manual, and the toolkits. Another initiative, and Dan mentioned this one as well, is that you've heard the term NEPA assignment, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But the idea is that TxDOT, the state, has the ability to undertake or take over the decision-making of the environmental document approval from the Federal Highway Administration based on MAP 21, the last reauthorization. And we kind of phased that in where we decided to move forward with the CE determinations first. And so that went into effect where earlier this year, effective February, that TxDOT is now the approver for the CE determinations instead of certain CEs going to Federal Highway Administration for final approval. So we've been operating under that for a while. That was getting that program underway was quite a bit of work, and I really compliment my staff who worked on that, and then the districts who cooperated with us, helped us out getting it all straight, because the idea is that making the CE determination is very document intensive, that if it's not documented, the decision doesn't exist. And so that the idea that everything needs to be in the file when you make a decision on the CE, that it required this compliance point, it didn't require this one. Well, it's not just that you knew in your head it didn't require it, it needed to be in the file, documented that we thought about it, and it applies or not applies, and if it did apply, you followed the process to be compliant with whatever it is that was we're working under there. So again, working through our ECOS program, working with the districts, and we rolled out all the tools to make the program sturdy enough to undertake NEPA assignment for categorical exclusion decisions. And I'll say it seems, again, working within ECOS, I think it's been fairly successful so far, and there have been tremendous time savings. Another initiative that we've rolled out, and this is really an extensive effort to provide a tool for local governments, but also our district offices as well, is that the Historic Bridge Program, that we've got a really nice online tool for how to handle historic bridges. And I don't know why I don't have the website on there, but it's accessible through the E&V web page, that you can access this website for folks who are interested in how to handle and what to do with historic bridges that they may own. It's got interactive maps. It's got a guidance document. It's got examples. So it's a very helpful tool. Our bridge program folks spend a lot of time on that. Our consultants spend some time on that. And I've been through it myself. It's fairly impressive. It's a very easy to use tool. And then furthering our streamlining approach, we often have to coordinate with every tribe in the state for federal documents that move forward. And right now, we choose, if we don't have a programmatic agreement with these tribes, we do individual consultation, which means we send them a notice, we send them a document, we give them a certain amount of time to review and comment, and if we don't hear back from them, often we have to check with them to see if they're considering comments, and they may say yes or no, we're still looking at it. There is some ongoing communications if they don't stick with the deadline, and the coordination can extend some period. So it's often a lot of effort and a lot of waiting, and only on occasion do they actually comment. So ideally, that we'd like to have programmatic agreements that we only need to coordinate with them under certain circumstances. We are now we've got one of these new agreements signed this past year with the Wichita tribe that addressed a couple of our busiest districts. And so now there are PAs in place with 16 of the 25 tribes out there that have really streamlined our process when we need to coordinate with the tribes located in the state. And then our MOU with Texas Parks and Wildlife. That's been in place for a number of years. And one of the things that I noticed early on in this position was that the coordination with Parks and Wildlife under this MOU is, I don't know, it's a lot of paperwork exchange with not a whole lot of result. Let's put it that way, put it nicely. And it was a whole lot of effort, a whole lot of waiting time. And again, with very little result. If they did comment, maybe they would provide substantial comments. Maybe we would respond with some kind of mitigation proposal. Sometimes not. Anyway, we focused on trying to streamline this, and the goal was let's shoot for the first year to have coordinated half as many documents that we did the previous year, last fiscal year, 2013. And so, as of this point, in 2014 compared to 2013, we've achieved that goal. We are sending just under half of the projects we sent in the previous year. So that we've screened out that Parks and Wildlife, we've screened out ourselves that Parks and Wildlife doesn't need to see this document. And again, this applied to, we've reduced the number by half, and we hope to, in the next year, cut it again by half, and then see what we have left. So again, just removing the amount of coordination we need to do under the MOU, which cost us a month or 2 or 3 in the coordination process and letter exchange and whatnot. And then there is NEPA assignment, which I alluded to a little bit what that is. And again, the idea is that we can also pursue NEPA assignment for EAs and EISs. And that means that the review and approval would stop with the Environmental Affairs Division instead of going on to Federal Highways for their final review and approval and sign off. Essentially, we are taking on the authority and the responsibility for those environmental decisions for EA level projects and EIS level projects. Again, tremendous effort by the group that works in my office, which involved a lot of coordination with district people about how we're setting this up. The program, that before we can adopt this process, move forward with this, really the program needs to be very structured, consistent, and documentation heavy, to where again, every decision needs to be documented. We submitted our application for this program back in April. Essentially, we got a verbal approval that the application was okay. We moved forward with the MOU, which is the legal binding agreement between our 2 agencies, TxDOT and Federal Highway Administration. And there was some lengthy legal discussion on the MOU, but we kind of had a breakthrough about a month ago. So just last Friday, the draft MOU and the application went out posted on the Federal Register for public notice. At this point, assuming we don't get comments that we have a tough time dealing with, we think we can achieve or be working under a NEPA assignment by the end of the year. So that major breakthrough last week was a little dated, that bullet point. All right, and with this, and talking about or following up on the NEPA assignment discussion, that under our CE assignment program, we get audited or get reviewed by FHWA. The program gets reviewed, and so we underwent our first audit back in June, and then with that, they Federal Highway Administration gave us a report that identified, made comments, and also noted some deficiencies. And what I'll do is I'll turn it over to Sue Tice, and she will cover what that program or what that review found and what we're doing about it.